Hola, hola a todas, hola a todos. Bienvenidos a una nueva edición de VOR OnLive. Como seguramente ya saben, VOR en la navegación aérea es un mecanismo que emite señales para que el piloto se mantenga en la ruta correcta. En Centro, VOR es una serie de diálogos e intervenciones que buscan resolver problemas complejos y abordar temas a través de la creatividad. Y hoy es un día muy especial porque vamos a abordar uno de los ejes centrales que atraviesa todo el quehacer, todos los programas de Centro, que es la tecnología, y lo vamos a pensar desde la creatividad. Como va a ser una plática en inglés, voy a presentar también a nuestros invitados en inglés para ya darles la palabra. Entonces, welcome to VOR. Today we have a very interesting event. We're going to talk about creative technology, immersive experiences, live shows, and many interesting things that involve a lot of interesting and skills that we try to develop in Centro in different ways. And we have very special people to join us. First, of course, we have our very own Roberto Cabezas, who is the head of all the programs in Centro that have to do with technology. There he is. And we're very fortunate to have with us the three people who are part of the team of 2N Design, which is a very important design studio in the US, and they'll talk about their experiences with different artists like Childish Gambino, MGMT, Tame Impala, and also some other stuff related to what they do, joining creative technology. Their names are Alejandro Crawford, Jeremy Thompson, and Ostian Woolfolk. They're joining us from the US, but also from Scotland. So we have a lot of different time zones simultaneously. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for being with us in VOR. And I'm sure we're going to learn and we're going to talk about very interesting things today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you guys again for taking the time to talk to us. I'm sure there's plenty of people with questions about. I'm remembering you guys, if you go to the chats in any applications you are watching the stream, you can go and pop your questions. So Alejandro, Ostian, Jeremy, welcome to VOR at Centro.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I'm sure there's plenty conversations about storytelling, technology, and we are eager to hear from you. What's your process? How do you think about when you acquire a project, when you say yes to a project without thinking scale, without thinking what to use? Can you share a little bit about your experience on saying yes to a project?
Well, we always want to say yes. I think that's the first thing. That's kind of our starting position. But usually it depends on the type of project, I think. Like a lot of our clients and collaborators are musicians. So if we think of it from that context, a lot of people come to us to visualize their music or to come up with a way to render their music in an experiential way. So a lot of times it starts the way anything starts, with kind of, from a musical perspective, understanding like what the music looks like in our heads, you know, cork boards and whiteboards and mood boards, Pinterests, the way you always do. And then kind of after you create a collective web of visuals, maybe some sticky note words as well that kind of conceptually tie it all together, then we just start iterating together, and we're all very fluent in different tool sets for, you know, the creation of visual media. We work a lot with game engines, so we like to kind of get our hands dirty and rapidly prototype immediately. Sometimes just because it's easier to articulate to one another by just making a scene in a video game as like kind of that and you know, the stick figure equivalent of a scene. Or at least for me, it's always a stick figure one. And then Jeremy will do a napkin sketch and it will look like he spent 8 months, you know, making it or something. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I don't think there's any kind of secret recipe that we have that's not a tried and true design practice. You know, we kind of, we understand what the client wants, or at least their starting position. And then maybe we have institutional knowledge that allows us to kind of tell them that there are other areas of opportunity that maybe they haven't consider. And sometimes we'll kind of try to find the right way to articulate those areas of opportunity with them. But a lot of times we think that, showing is a lot easier than describing. So a lot of times we just kind of try to mood board or collage or make an animatic of some kind, any way to kind of align the team together on a vision, I think.
Nice. And for us to understand what are your roles on 2N, could you describe a little bit, Alejandro, Jeremy, Austin, your set of skills and what you bring to the projects?
Sure. I mean, we're a very small team, and we work really well together. So obviously we kind of our hats kind of trade off sometimes, but we all have different kind of core strengths and just things that we like to kind of divvy up the resourcing and the labor with a lot of times. Like I really enjoy a lot of the kind of high level creative design, concepting, world building, a lot of the kind of conceptual impetus, and then but we all kind of share all of that. I mean, Jeremy definitely is our strongest person within the group to realize a lot of our ideas from kind of a rendering perspective. He's certainly the strongest renderer out of the team. Austin is really excellent with all things kind of technology and systems wise. So like if we have a kind of a prototypey way of doing something to get our point across, Austin will then come up with a scalable way that that's not going to break.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, Austin, sorry.
I was just saying that's always the goal, for it just to simply not break.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say my strong suits definitely rely on the back end media server design and like from a concert design standpoint. So what are the newest touch designer tools we can use and how do we get it done?
Yeah, I think for me, just trying to sort of keep up with all of the advances in Unreal Engine rendering tech and pushing boundaries there, and just sort of the visual fidelity of like kind of what we can do in the engine is super interesting to me, and it's something that's kept me coming back to working in real time.
Nice. And do you have like a special tool? You are like agnostic of the tools you use?
I think it depends on what we're working on. Like we specialize in real-time rendering, where we certainly think there's the most kind of creative energy and potential, and we think it's like most cost-effective, and it's just how we like to work because it gives us the kind of the freedom of iteration that we enjoy. But if offline rendering is the more correct or efficient way to do something, we're kind of agnostic. I think the way that we think about it is this industry or industries is like, it's like having a magazine subscription for the rest of your life. And you have to keep that magazine subscription going. And you have to keep up with it, like Jeremy's saying. And if you don't keep up with it, the next version of the software that you thought you knew suddenly, doesn't work the same way that you thought it did. And so there's a certain kind of like vigilance and media literacy that's kind of needed, which I think is what Jeremy's speaking to, is the sense that we're, constantly keeping up with the newest version and the newest tool sets and the plugins that don't work anymore versus tools that still work or work better.
Yeah, totally. And somehow you guys work like a bridge between traditional studios and these new media possibilities, because, for example, in Pharos, you guys work with Beta Digital, and that's a completely traditional pipeline, a completely traditional Hollywood pipeline for movies, and you guys help them bring it to real-time stuff.
That was super exciting. I mean, we were definitely very cognizant of that kind of dynamic between us, this very new, young studio. I mean, we all consider ourselves confident designers and we know what we want to do, but suddenly you're paired with Weta and like you guys are going to make some 3D art and we're going to make some 3D art, and it all has to look the same or like as good. Their stuff has to look as good as ours. We need to like kind of explain where we think opportunities are for real-time stuff. The team that we worked with there are kind of some of the champions of real-time rendering within the kind of Weta organization. They have experience making tool sets, whether it's for visualization or rendering kind of projects that are real-time in nature within Weta. So they definitely understood that kind of the point of departure, but I think what we brought to the table was a lot of the kind of show design and like almost like how do you VJ a video game and what does it mean to design good like opportunities for that. And I think that's where we were kind of able to kind of showcase some of our strengths.
Yeah, basically how you go beyond the traditional screen.
Exactly, yeah. And you know, for a lot of kind of shows and traditional ways of doing things, you know, you ingest videos into a media server and the time code does the time code and you kind of all figured it out like you're editing in Final Cut and, you know, you hit play and everything's cool. But that is, by our estimation, sometimes a more correct path. But to us, what is so exciting about something like Pharos is the idea that of creating kind of like an instrument, but like so like DJing, but like a video game. So you know the idea that it's not like you're holding a PlayStation controller; it's like a DJ controller, like an APC 40. But the idea is that you know there's a keyboard player in the band, there's a bass player in the band. They're playing their parts. Austin was controlling the game engine, and he was playing his parts, and he knew what his parts were. And you know we have some kind of fallback technologically, but at the same time, if Donald suddenly stops to talk to the crowd for 3 minutes before a song, we have the freedom in our systems to accommodate that. We can chill and we can let him do his thing. We can react to kind of the guitar solo that wasn't totally anticipated, and we can match those dynamics musically because the systems that we create are dynamics inherently dynamics driven, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, you keep it alive. And
yeah, like we think of like something like rain as something that's like pianissimo to fortissimo, right? It's like if there's a scene that we have a dial to make it rain versus to make it really pour, well, you know, we're going to control it based on the kind of the way the song is feeling at that time, or you know, lightning strikes or making a character dance or something.
Yeah, somehow you guys relate to the gesture of music and try to express it with different systems through technology.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of our design philosophy when it comes to working with musical artists, especially, is that we like reactivity, we like audio reactivity. We think of like kind of our systems from an instrumental perspective when we can and when it makes sense. And that kind of freedom is more dynamic because, you know, it puts the onus on the operator as a performer to like play and to have a sense of the environment they're in, to follow along.
Yeah, and in terms of technology, Jeremy, how do you experience the show? You are all the show in the tip of your toes, like hoping that the computer is not gonna crash. Do you have backups?
We have backups for Pharos?
Yeah, we did. We had 2 full racks,
I think we were very confident in the system we were building, and for that and for other shows. I mean, I think you know that one was a little seat of the pants in the sense that a lot of the stuff hadn't been done before, but we were confident enough in the way that it was being built that you know, and we had run through it so many times before the show that you know we felt good about it.
Yeah, that was definitely a scarier one where there were just so many new variables that we had to overcome. But we definitely felt confident in the fact that every single piece in our chain had a redundant backup so that if anything were to go wrong, we could always switch over that. But a lot of links in the chain were definitely involved.
The whole thing can crash at a moment's notice. It's a little spicier.
And in terms of designing the narrative in a space like this, what was your process? Did you work very close with Donald to design the space, to be related to music?
Yeah, I mean, like we were charged with coming up with the initial kind of arc of the show design, and obviously that went through some iterations with Donald and their team. But on the whole, everybody seemed to be really into what we were kind of wanting to do. You know, this is kind of bird's eye view of the kind of Google slides that led to kind of the final green lighting of the creative. But what we wanted to do that was super ambitious and interesting was we wanted to take the audience on a kind of seamless journey. We thought of it kind of like a ride. Like, we didn't want to just kind of fade to black in between every single song and then fade in. We wanted there to be kind of a cohesive feeling of how that transition happens from how we're in, how are we in outer space, and how do we get to inside of a forest? Like, what does that look like? And then from a game design perspective, what does that look like? How do we get from this level or this map to here? So because we want it to be seamless, we knew we couldn't have loading screens, right? It couldn't be just like, whoop, next one, and then we kind of like wait for it. So from a technological perspective, we had to come up with kind of idiosyncratic ways of doing that. And what I mean by that is, like, a regular game designer is not going to shove like all of the game into like the graphics card's video texture memory, because they're like kind of going to target a consumer grade graphics card or whatever. And we were like, no, we're going to use huge graphics cards, and we're going to shove as much onto the graphics card so it's ready to go as possible, so that we can do, so we can do the things that we want. We wanted to have an operator like dynamics driven show where a human being has the same role and responsibility that the drummer has or the bass player has. They bring a level of performance to the table. And, certain things can be tracked and can feel risk-free, but at the same time, like, I think dynamics are a big part of what we want. The technology, had to support all of that. We can kind of come back to that. But to answer your question, this was kind of a funny screenshot or a photo that I found in my camera roll way after we had finished. It's kind of an attempt to describe or to map how we're gonna pull this off. How are we gonna go from like inside a world that kind of is a trick? It feels like you're in a dome. You're in a dome for real already, but we wanted to kind of make it feel like you're in a sci-fi dome. And then suddenly, like kind of like how privacy glass works, where it's opaque. And then when the show starts, it's kind of like, and suddenly you see a whole sky and a world on the outside. And then the dome opens up, and then kind of crazy tentacular creatures start crawling up it. And then we fall down through the world into kind of a microscopic world. And then we kind of zoom back into like a cool, beautiful New Zealand forest. And we go through a waterfall down a kind of cool, beautiful river with surreal trees, then end up in like a birch forest. And then everything catches on fire. And then we go up into outer space. And then we go into a forest. And then it starts to rain, which turns into a flood, which brings us under the ocean, which brings us way under the ocean into kind of the deep, deep sea. Then we come all the way back up to the surface and do kind of this really cool This Is America kind of closing thing. So from a world building perspective, that's kind of one conversation. And that kind of proffers a whole host of how are we going to pull this off kind of questions, like from a technological standpoint afterwards.
Yeah, because the process of technology was involved on how to create narrative for this space, right? Because you have not the access to the actual place, so you have to look out for another kind of experience on how to design it. You were using like VR stuff to try to compensate for the lack of reality.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with a project this big, the size of this dome, I think it's just like the world's largest inflatable dome. I forget. Austin, do you remember its like diameter? I don't remember. It's like 90 feet
200
tall.
feet maybe.
Yeah,
across.
I forget. It's big. It's the world's largest inflatable dome. But like one does not simply have access to a dome like this. And so the design process had to go in kind of stages. One, we just started working. We knew we had a lot of art to make and a lot of kind of 3D iteration to do. Weta came up with a really nice VR tool set that allowed us to use, I believe, Spout, which is kind of an NDI-like way of streaming video back and forth. And so there were a couple different mechanisms to allow us to figure out if our designs were good in 360. It's like 360 cinematography is obviously its own kind of can of worms compared to traditional cinematography where you have kind of the frustum and it's this. But the thing that was challenging about this design is that the concert was in the round. So Donald is in the center and everyone is in 360. So for an audience member, we wanted to make sure that if one person is on this side of the dome, they're having as nice of an experience and the things that they're looking at feel and look as cool as the person, opposite them on the other side of the dome. So there was that aspect of it. So there were 3 different stages. We designed in New York first, where we live. We had the good fortune of working alongside the New Museum's incubator, New Ink, and we were there. We started amassing so much gear for this project that it started to feel like embarrassing. We're like sharing rooms and space with everybody, and suddenly like just piles of computers and things like that. And our chief projectionist lived in Los Angeles, and so some of our other team lived in Los Angeles. And it made sense to kind of treat Los Angeles as a stepping stone staging ground for New Zealand. So we hooked up with a studio out there called VT Pro, and they were amazing. They let us kind of live inside of the back of their studio. They set up a dome that was obviously a lot smaller than the real dome, but had a 1-to-1 relationship to the amount of video signals. So the amount of projectors was the same. The amount, our full system was able to be built, tested, retested, and then we just kind of live and breathe inside that little mini dome for a month. And then we all flew to New Zealand and, worked at the real dome, but also in the conference room of the hotel, and then kind of exclusively at the end in the middle of this national forest, basically.
Okay. And how do you approach the creation of narrative for a new medium like this?
Yeah. I think for me, to me, it's like, if it's music we're talking about, if it's the scoring of songs, it's as simple as like putting on headphones and closing your eyes and then writing down, what does this song look like? What does the song feel like? We have these assumptions. Sometimes the artist will bring those assumptions to the table. If the artist already knows the answer to that, then we usually kind of use that as a starting point. And if it's kind of more carte blanche, then we kind of go with our own artistic intuition and just present opportunities and options, mood board it, make kind of concept art to test our assumptions. And then when there's kind of enough buy-in among the team about what we want to do, what we think is cool, then we just kind of keep pushing forward, and bad ideas fall away and good ideas stay. The thing that I think is super cool about designing for audio with respect to kind of spatial media like a 3D world is you're designing an experience. Let's say like you're like, okay, for this song, I want to be inside of a boat, and the boat goes down the river, and so it's like goes down the river, and then it's like verse happens, and then we'll be here, and then the chorus happens, and we'll hit this beat, and we'll be here. But maybe the camera was going too slow in your first assumption about how fast you should be moving down that river. Well, Jeremy just made a whole level that kind of went with the first assumptions. Now he has to kind of literally make the level a different size just because we changed the speed of the camera. So the relationship to the 3D world and how the song is kind of tracked is a huge one. And then that'll change again, because when you're in a giant dome, what you think is a good feeling of speed becomes like, it feels super enormous, like when you go to an IMAX movie. So that kind of proprioceptive element. But like, for example, here is the waveform of This Is America, right? Your traditional kind of intro, you have your chorus, you have your verse, your little interlude. And so Jeremy had to kind of mock up and then make all of the 3D art for how this experience is going to work. So we said we wanted to have this kind of dystopian, surreal, like Mad Max, like Steamboat River neon, like with like police stations and sparks and flames going, kind of like you're going through these canal locks. So Jeremy like made this insanely gorgeous like world. And once we got the speed right and we had kind of locked the art, I was able to go back and just kind of take a quick bird's eye view. This is the kind of unlit look, downward look at that, right? You can kind of see the boat and you can kind of see these locks. So, was going through the This Is America song. And so it should feel like as we're passing through these thresholds, okay, we're entering a new structural part of the song. And what's kind of cool is when you put these next to each other, and this was kind of serendipitous, you can see this relationship, right? You can see how, like, from the bird's eye view, the waveform and the structure kind of maps. I mean, literally the breakdown of a chorus and verse aligns with where those big doors are. And that's no surprise. It's because we designed it that way. And that's kind of like representative of how we think of.
So Jeremy, you're like a one-man army. So how do you keep up with all the assets and all the stuff that you have to put in a scene?
This for this specific project, it was every world. I tried to keep the number of assets fairly like keep it to like 7 or 8 assets that are like these sort of big hero assets that are fairly modular, so that when you are designing the environment, you can make changes really quickly. So like Alejandro was saying, we started off in New York making all of these worlds, right? And we didn't have access to the mini dome that we had in LA where we could like see it in the round. Once you see it in 360 degrees, you realize like it's all wrong. You have to move everything around, right? Like it doesn't look, even like a VR previs doesn't do it complete justice, right? So you have to design the world so that they're very modular and that you can make quick changes. And then it's just putting headphones on and running it over and over and over and over until the basic form or structure is in place, and then you add you can add all of your accents and hits and everything else that you need to add. And another funny thing that we realized when working in the dome too is like you want to feel grounded. You want to be able to feel that ground plane, right? You want to be able to see all of those textures and feel like you're really immersed in the environment. So a lot of the levels, we almost put the camera in like a trench, so that the camera is like a little bit below sea level, right? So that like you're seeing the ground, and it makes you sort of feel more immersed in the environment. So there was some like learning curve things along the way, but the design really just had to be, I think, just modular, and be, you have to be able to move it around quickly.
Alongside every world, we kind of had like a list of what are our VJ-able opportunities per song. So, with this squid thing, what are the things that we want the performer to be able to do with the squid? Well, I want to have like a bullet time kind of way of slowing them down. I want to have a button that can make them zoom through, the middle of the dome. I want to have another button that will make them kind of come down from the apex, and their whole like squid skirt will open up, and like want to have a button or a slider or fader that can kind of make their bioluminescence like be super intense or super chill. So kind of every world needed to have, keys that you could play, basically.
Yeah, and we have here an interesting question that says, how do you guys think these immersive experiences could revolutionize other performance arts? Because I know you guys work also with theater people.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of in this post-specific medium kind of world where these tools allow us to do whatever we want, So like in the kind of musical theater aspect, like it depends on the way you think about it, but you kind of, in the way that you think of like a lighting director or the kind of person that's out there controlling stuff, that is kind of one approach to it. There's also sensor-based approaches too, where you have camera systems tracking the performers wearing trackers on their bodies. Camera vision and sensors and game engines or real-time rendering allow you to do things that video files and alpha channels just won't ever let you do, I guess.
And for you, Austin, was hard to change your kind of mind from a traditional background to start these new words?
It definitely was, because my background is I went to film school at NYU. And so I was very used to like animating and like editing films and Premiere, just on that final product, the final product. But as I started getting into concerts more and working with Alejandro and then Jeremy, I started like learn about just how beautiful the flexibility was. And like, as I got into music and realizing that you could perform along with them, that just the more dynamic control you had over it, the more interesting of a performance you could have, I think just totally blew my mind. And like I was perpetually chasing like how to make this more and more dynamic. And so the fact that my own personal journey started with like hard baked clips, and now we can have an entire world that you travel from world scene to scene within this, and that you take concert on, I think is only just the beginning of like how interactive and immersive the show can be.
And did you have to forget some of your traditional education that to say this?
I don't know if I had to forget it as much as like reimagine it, because not just telling a story, but also creating like interactive moments along the story. And so we may still have an act 1, act 2, act 3, but you have to have option A, B, C happens in act 1 now, because you want to have the flexibility that every experience is a little bit different, and think about the ways and like the multiple paths to a final endpoint you may get to.
And somehow you guys take different roles around the production. You're that like generalist of 3D making, of 3D thinking, of 3D narration.
It depends on the scale of the project, whether we do most of the stuff just ourselves, or whether we kind of direct a team that we put together, so that we can accomplish the goals within like the usually fairly aggressive kind of time window we have to deal with.
And your other kinds of collaboration, for example, the Atkins show that you did.
Yeah, that's another thing that's done completely in a game engine. So Ed Atkins is a British poet and artist who is known for his kind of uncanny valley, hyperrealistic, surreal, sublime 3D art. A lot of times, and simulations are kind of a thing that he's becoming increasingly interested in, because of the kind of freedom and poetic interest that it offers, right? It's like when you think of like Mallarmé or any kind of like Plinko, like procedural poetics, like basically what Refuse is it's like it's a 2-channel video game. So it was designed for Gavin Brown's Enterprises. It's an art gallery that was here in Manhattan. And if you picture like on the 4th floor, you have this portrait mode screen, and it's just like object after object falling, kind of like, you know, enter the top frame and then go like, and it would hold and then it would fall down. And that object might be, you know, this lit torch, or it might be, you know, 300 pairs of jeans, or it might be 1,000 bricks, or a bunch of dead birds or skulls, or it was just this litany, you know. It's almost like the poem is being enacted as this kind of this list poem of objects of refuse. And so they're falling through the top screen, and then on the bottom screen, it's like they're hitting the stage. And so over the kind of course of 30 minutes, they're forming this big kind of pile of trash, for lack of a better term. And, you know, from a technical perspective, that's super challenging because well, video games have to handle all the physics. So this piece was like this super complex love letter to all kinds of physics interactions, you know, soft body physics, rigid body stuff, wood that has to hit a tire and the tire needs to kind of give a little bit, you know, on top of like kind of particles that need to go poof once an object falls, of just the app just needing to kind of keep track of hundreds of thousands of objects at once in a pile. So this was a super exciting project for us, and maybe in some respects challenging in a different way than the Pharos project, I think.
Yeah, because I'm not sure where I read that you had to do your own like version of Unreal Engine dynamic systems with some special NVIDIA libraries.
Yeah, we used a number of kind of NVIDIA tools that don't come with the engine. You know, you kind of have to install them. One of the things we like about the Unreal Engine a lot is the fact that you have the source code of the engine. So you start there, and then you can modify it and you can change it. For both Pharos and this, we had to make a couple modifications to the engine using NVIDIA tools more so on this one. In Pharos, we had to like there was an engineer on our team that had to like rewrite the random function that Unreal uses, like kind of crazy there. But like for this, it was like, I think we used what, Jeremy? NVIDIA Blast. We used another NVIDIA Fluid Sim thing.
Flex.
Flex.
Yeah, Flex. And where do you think you can draw the line on modifying or creating your own technology for explicit narrative? You go all the way, you go the middle way.
No, I think you only
Always go the middle way.
only do it when it's absolutely necessary. Like try not to do it, I would say. Avoid doing it. But you know, if you want to build a car, you want to build a car. If you want to build a car and design tires to go on that car, it's because there are no acceptable tires already or something. So I don't know. We don't go out of our way to write new systems or like kind of have a specific fetish towards custom workflows. It just so happens that our ideas sometimes require things that don't exist off the shelf.
Yeah, and that's where you go forward with. Yeah, I think if you're muted, Jeremy, I'm not sure. Because
okay. Yeah,
we can listen to you now.
Project with, a lot of soft body physics and really specific destruction, like really kind of realistic destruction. So using those extra features was necessary, but yeah, like these guys were saying, it's, if you can get away with just using a vanilla engine, like that's always going to be an easier path.
Yeah, but I think there is some achievement of personalization that goes beyond the mainstream possibilities of the tools in terms of technological achieves. So I think I have one question from the audience right now. How do you think of immersive experiences? And do you tend to rely on the real world? Do you prefer defining these laws on your simulations?
Well, I mean, I think
for this in particular, we definitely were striving for realism as much as possible. And we just spent day after day thinking, like, is this how 100 pair of jeans would fall? And then tweak it and be like, no, this is not how jeans would fall. And we were just literally Googling videos of like, oh, what does a dead bird falling into the air look like? And so this one in particular, we were just like driving ourselves crazy to try and be like, as close to realism as possible. And then at a point, you just have to accept that like the uncanny valley is where we're going to land, and like let's lean into that. And I think Ed Atkins' work in particular really kind of loves to play on that line.
Okay.
I think the other things too is like a game engine is like a holodeck, right? It's like a physics engine. And so depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to make a hyper-realistic like love letter to real physics, you do it one way. If you're trying to make a surreal, otherworldly experience, you know, you have total freedom to make the gravity math work for your idea. You have total freedom to make the laws of physics break and bend to your will. Like, I think that that's what's so exciting to us about game engines specifically, is that there's no like rule. It's just like, what do you want to make? And so when we think of like client-based interactive experiences or stuff that we make for other artists, you know, we try to like make sure that everyone is aware, especially the artist is aware that we can do whatever we want. It doesn't just need to be, you know, what maybe people might assume it could be. You know, we see a lot of it even with like the kind of post-pandemic virtual concert kind of stuff. We're seeing like a lot of, you know, people think virtual concert and they see virtual stage, virtual PA speakers on the side, virtual audience standing and looking up at the stage, you know, and maybe there's more to the opportunities than just kind of, you know, putting a
totally
theater and filming the stage kind of thing.
And in that regards, I have another question here. It's when it comes to interactive creations, what would you consider important aspects regarding accessibility for a differently able public?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that, you know, when we think about certainly shippable games and like kind of experiences that are for the public at large. I think one thing we kind of all have been talking about recently within the 2N team is how well, for example, the Last of Us 2 team did with accessibility features and how meaningful that was to the people that, you know, those features were written for. So, you know, whether it's color blindness, deaf and blind kind of accessibility features, I think that, you know, that studio is a testament to the importance of being thoughtful about that kind of stuff. And, you know, I hope that that becomes a new benchmark in terms of how studios approach that kind of stuff.
Nice. And can this technology be used to take other level to data visualization? Because at Centro we have a data visualization program, and sometimes I show them possibilities that are not traditional, are not graph bars, are not pie charts.
Yeah.
I think these tools are quite feasible to adapt to a number and a representation of data.
Oh, 100%. I mean, let me see if I can come up with an example, like right off the top of my head. Imagine that you took like the like readily available JSON feed for a stock market or cryptocurrency exchange, that real-time data, and you made a VR roller coaster out of the price changes per minute or something, right? That you've now created a way of experiencing market volatility in a data visual kind of way, just by taking raw numbers from like an API or something like that. So yeah, game engines are fascinating ways of doing data visualization. You could take, you know, the number of X and then render that many birds in the sky as a way to show something, right?
And to get back like to your other kind of work, I think WAVA, the Coachella show, was like a little bit of the traditional pipeline of animation mixed with these new media techniques.
Definitely. I mean,
yeah, that was a great mix of the two. Because the entire thing was like driven by the time code of the Guava Island film. And so we were already locked to a hard timeline that we had to follow. And so for some aspects, we utilized animation in collaboration with the company 6 Point Harness. And so we could have the animations literally just come onto the screen. And then at other moments, we utilized some end display renders in which we used like references from the world to kind of play on to expanding from the film.
And then like game engines were used again here mostly for team alignment and for the iterative kind of design process, you know, traditional architectural pre-visualization. You know, we use like VR here literally to kind of decide as a group how big the screen should be, like, because it was kind of hard to abstractly decide. You know, there's like math for that. It's like, oh, it should be this big if you're this far away, but it's a feeling too. You know, it's like you could, and then somebody's going to spend money and they're going to make that screen. So if you get that wrong and you've just designed a temple to a movie and you got the screen size wrong, it's bad. So we kind of had this hilarious thing where we're going back and forth, handing the Oculus back and forth, and we wrote a kind of a quick tool that let us resize the screen dynamically, and then each of us would like kind of make it as big as we wanted and hit like the record that value button, and then we kind of see where we were. And like what it allowed us to do is, more than anything, it allowed us to work internally. Like we were able to design and come up with the design ourselves and communicate to ourselves, but we were also to communicate with our client and with all the contractors in a way that made sure that everybody was on the same page. So it wasn't just like, here's render A, render B, point of view 3. It's like, no, here's like Guava Island Simulator video game, and we're gonna like walk through it from every angle, and you're gonna understand how to orient yourself in this space. So like this video is from our kind of first one, and you know, it has all these kind of additional bells and whistles going on inside of it. We were like, it's gonna be all lush, and we're gonna have all this stuff in there. And then they were like, too much stuff for the prop stuff. Let's like simplify the interior. So we were able to simplify it. And then, you know, the second time around, we decided to spice it up with a little third person guy just to kind of make it feel that. But this was a way of us making sure that everybody understand what our expectations were, right? It's like, and so, ultimately Jeremy was able to make sure we would have like the laptop on the site, like on where they're building it with the shipping containers and the wood and everything. And if there was ever a question, Jeremy was able to answer that question by making the person look at the video game with them, look at that specific area. And then, this I think mitigates lots of oopsie daisies or bad assumptions kind of when you've started to spend money in production. So
yeah, that's very interesting, because technology for you, it's part of the process and part of the final product. And
definitely, I mean, we use it for content creation because it's for us the most effortless way to make art, and also we use it as an iterative design tool because it's the most articulate way that we know how to communicate, not only to each other, but to the people who are hiring us to do things.
And there's always the software questions, the software recommendations. For you, are you like married with a software? Do you think anything could be possible in any software? What are certain advantages that you see in Unreal Engine, for example? Could you share something about it?
Well, I have like my hot take is just like, if you want to get started quickly out of the box and you have limited programming experience, I think Unreal Engine is a really powerful way to go. You can get a lot done without being a kind of a programmer, right? You can use their visual scripting tools and the kind of out of the box vanilla drag and drops. You drag a camera into a blank Unreal Engine scene and it has a host of gorgeous post-processing VFX kind of things on it by default. And in contrast, a game engine like Unity, which is maybe arguably better and more free for kind of more nuanced windowing and maybe stronger for mobile, and certainly now with the kind of Epic versus Apple stuff. But you're going to need to know C#, period. You're not going to get very far in Unity without knowing how to code stuff. And so it depends on the project, depends on what the project wants. But on the whole, we use Unreal more than we use other rendering engines, I think. And we would recommend it, I would say. What do you guys think? Would you recommend it as a starting point?
It's really great. It's sort
Jeremy, you're muted.
Oh.
Oh, you're back. Never mind.
I was just saying, I think for artists, it's a really good tool to just jump in and get started and get that sort of immediate feedback. And it's also, there's a lot of really, really good documentation to get you up and running with Unreal. And yeah, for me, it was a complete game changer. So right now I'm pretty sold on it, as far as just sort of a tool for content creation, pre-visualization, and just sort of, communicating with clients and with, internally with our team. I think it's a great tool.
We were working simultaneously with Donald's team, not only on the Guava Island Theater, but on the his Coachella like headlining main stage design. Like what is the stage design going to look like? What are the opportunities here? And again, we were able to do. I'll show you very briefly. These are very quick fire studies, but they allowed us internally to figure out what the opportunities were as we iterated on kind of these crazy pods that had like lasers and lights on them. So being able to quickly, rapidly prototype, what are the opportunities here? What are the possibilities? What could that stuff look like and feel like? And then, what are the different positions? And that allowed the kind of LED programming team and the other members of the media server team to realize a lot of these kind of options. So we were able to kind of come from a high level design standpoint and say, we think this would be really cool, really elegant, really interesting. These pods go up and down. Some of them, sometimes it's lasers, sometimes it's lights. And we were able to kind of rapidly make little video studies and screenshots that then we could use in conversation with the rest of the team. And, we were able to iterate faster, I think, that way too.
And Touch Designer is like your control tool for your shows?
Correct. Yeah, we use Touch Designer for all of the kind of traditional media server architecture, even if that means that real-time rendering is being piped through a capture card or piped through NDI or something like that. Again, it's like the kind of thing where we didn't see any off-the-shelf media servers that were adequate for handling the amount of video data, the amount of outputs and inputs,
Okay.
amount of like kind of shader-based real-time stuff that we wanted to achieve. And so we wrote our own.
Nice.
Yeah, we love putting together Unreal and Touch Designer. Even just for those Coachella renders, we were using render targets in Unreal that were then siphoning out the camera feed to go on the iMac, that were mixing with the content that were then siphoning back into Unreal to put on the LED walls. And just like the feedback loop that we can create and just like throw stuff on the virtual LED screens and like play that back and forth is just so easy once you create the link between the two of them. And they're both just like so limitless that to just, oh, we need a tool, we can build it, is awesome about both of them.
And here we have a question that's interesting, because I think most of the time our students have a hard time dealing with technical difficulties. So how do you approach this in your project? Do you plan for technical difficulties in your scope of the overall project, or do you just hope everything is gonna be okay?
No, we don't hope that it's going to be okay. We know that that Murphy's Law is a very real and is a very aggressive force to be reckoned with. And like, it will, we joke a lot, like a lot of developers do, of like the kind of, it works on my machine, and or something like that. But like, from a kind of a professional and a process standpoint, we always have technological failover. Our clients require it. It's an industry standard process. You have to have like ways of dealing with, you have to have a solution in the moment. So when you say, oh shit, there's an answer there while you're troubleshooting that moment. But at the same time, we like taking risks. We think the opportunities that come out of true real-time stuff outweigh the scariness of failing or of something crashing. If something crashes during a show, who cares? Like it probably means you were trying to do something super interesting, or you have no idea what you're doing. It's one of those two probably. But like, to us, it's like cooler to try to use a flurry of live Xbox Connects that are a little volatile rather than record the artist with the Xbox Connect and then play that video back and make it feel like they're actually doing that live. That's not that interesting to us. And so, with new media territory comes more risk, and you have to lean into it, I think. And you'll get further that way. And don't be afraid of it.
Yeah, I think so too.
But with that said, we always build in our fail safes. Like if the thing does crash, we have our backup clip. If the server crashes, we have our backup server. Things will go wrong, and so plan for them, but also like lean into the spiciness.
Yeah, it's easy for me to say don't worry about it because Austin's got my back, and we'll make sure that make sure you have an Austin.
Yeah, somehow you have your plan B.
Yeah,
always have a plan B.
Yeah, with any one of these projects, you're going to constantly be running up against issues, and it just goes with the territory, and over time they become more and more familiar, and sort of you see the same things, and so you know how to deal with them. But we always try to approach these things in a very methodical way too when we're working through a project, so that it doesn't get the best of us.
We never had Pharos crash until the very end of the final performance, as the lights had already come on, people were like leaving the dome, and some weird edge case in the software where, it's been running for a while after everything. So that was like the moment where we kind of had a big laugh, because we started to like pack up everything, and then it was like, and so we all looked around like, who turned it off? And it was like, nobody did it.
Cool, guys. Well, I think this can show us the new possibilities of job opportunities, how traditional skills blend with new media and new ways of thinking. So thank you very much for accepting our invitations to Centro, and we hope we can see face-to-face sooner than later.
We're excited to come down next year. And to any of the students and people in the chat that ask questions that we didn't get around to, like, we love answering questions. So just email us at info@2n.design, and we'll do our best to kind of answer your questions and help you out. Because, I mean, we've gotten to where we are because we asked a lot of questions to people. And so we got to answer those questions for whoever's got them.
No, thank you, Jeremy, Austin, and Alejandro, for your time and your sharing also.
I was going to thank all of you, like also Roberto, thank you for hosting this great event. And also, before, we always ask this to people who invite. I don't know if you wanted to ask, to answer, Jeremy and Alejandro and Austin, if you have any also recommendations for our audience, because many people find a lot of inspiring things. What movies, books, artists, what are you doing right now, particularly right now that we're confined? Where are you finding your creative juices?
Oh man,
I don't know if I don't know, music. I don't know what do you recommend to get inspiration?
Well, we play a lot of video games, and so we share what we're playing amongst each other. And it's we say it's homework sometimes, maybe for wives and girlfriends and other friends in our life who may criticize the amount of time we play video games. But we take a lot of inspiration from the work that other people have done. Certainly from the movies that we're watching, the shows we're watching, the books we're reading. So I don't know. I mean, right now we're all kind of playing a bunch of different games together. We're thinking a lot about multiplayer games right now together, just for a bunch of different reasons. And so we're playing a lot of multiplayer games. And
which one? Which one?
Well, we've been playing a lot of the traditional ones. We're kind of fascinated by environments like Animal Crossing and super tight systems like A Short Hike, which we just played and we all were really enamored by. And also just kind of larger projects. So, a mix of games, reading. I really like Raised by Wolves. I don't know who else watched that.
Yeah. Great. I don't know if Jeremy or Austin want to jump in.
Yeah, I think Last of Us 2, Ghost of Tsushima have been going through a lot of these Mobius books recently. Listening to a lot of music. We've all been confined in our apartments, so I think the video games have been super helpful and super important. Oh, Fall Guys, been playing a lot of Fall Guys.
As Among Us.
It's part fun, part homework, research type stuff,
and also survival.
Yeah, totally,
absolutely.
But
then always Instagram. Find lots of people that are posting cool things, figure out how those people have made those cool things, read the forums, watch the YouTube videos, and just rinse and repeat, find other cool things that are related. So I spend so much time on YouTube and forums just figuring out how to do the next thing or how somebody did accomplish something cool. So follow those rabbit holes.
Yeah. Nice.
Well, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for also opening up your different worlds to all of us right now that we're at home. And to all we're going to do a follow-up with some of your quotes, the recommendations you've mentioned, your contact in case people want to talk to you guys or collaborate or anything. And so if anyone is interested and hasn't registered for the event in Eventbrite, please leave us your email in any of the platforms and we'll send you all this follow-up. We hope to have 2N, the 2N team in Mexico on site whenever we can. for workshop and great collaboration. So thank you all. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, all of you. I'm very glad we also did a very time traveling conversation, which was great.
Yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting us and giving us the opportunity.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you, guys. See ya.
Thank you so much.
You.
Hay cosas que se necesitan muchas veces automatizar, que serían muy lentas o muy tediosas hacerlas a mano, y que el código es la maravilla que nos brinda, ¿no? O sea, estos loops o estas repeticiones que la computadora hace muy fácil, pero que a los humanos nos tarda mucho tiempo estar haciendo.
Ocupo mucho el código pues para cortar mucho el tiempo de trabajo. Ahorita estoy justo armando un proyecto con Timberland que va más enfocado en la ilustración.
Yo hago motion graphics en específico. Acabo de hacer un video, una animación de insertos de columna vertebral para pacientes.
Todavía en México no hay bastante gente que se especialice en eso. De hecho son pocos, entonces en general los clientes que te contactan se quedan contigo porque pues no hay mucho en dónde buscar, ¿no?